Do you ever wake up in the morning feeling like you're just going through the motions and simply working for a paycheck that seems to disappear quicker than it comes in? Well, I'm here to tell you that it doesn't need to be this way. Now, with a couple simple changes, you can work towards taking control of your finances. And look, I get it, mastering your finances can definitely seem like a difficult task to accomplish considering the amount of information overload that we're bombarded with every single day. Personal finance can quickly feel like more of a confusing chore than it is something that's fun to strategize. So scratch everything you know about personal finance up to this point. Well, okay, maybe not everything, but definitely anything that might be lingering in the back of your mind, giving you money anxiety, because today's video is going to give you a simple to implement framework that I've personally used over the past 4 years to help me take control of my finances. Hey everyone, my name's Griffin, and don't worry if you're feeling financially behind, because there's really no reason to be. Just because social media is painting a picture of lavish lifestyle and travel for some does not mean that this is the reality for the masses when we pull back the curtain. After all, the median savings amount across American households is roughly $11,700, or the equivalent of roughly half a brand new Honda Civic. And on average, Americans carry $6,200 in credit card debt, which is the polar opposite of financial freedom. By the way, I only mention this to offer some perspective here, and I'm not encouraging complacency when it comes to your finances, but if you aspire to one day have options when it comes to your life and your retirement, rather than working and pinching pennies into your 90s, which considering modern healthcare will probably be the equivalent to 70 years old in a couple of decades, well, keep watching because this video is for you. Oh, and don't worry, I'm not going to tell you to cancel your Netflix and Spotify account. We'll consider those to be essentials, just don't tell Dame Ramsey. So when you think about personal finance and your own financial planning, you might think to call up your rep at the mutual fund brokerage or whip out an overly complicated spreadsheet filled with financial ratios, as well as trying to calculate down to the T the exact amount you need to live off of 4% a year. But this can be very difficult to calculate and project out because we have the unknowns of future inflation as well as the future cost of living. So I'm here to tell you that none of this is really required if you don't want it to be. Rather, I've just used a super simple rule that I learned a couple of years back called the 50-30-20 rule. That's really simple to follow, especially if you have a 9-to-5 with steady income. And this is something that had really helped me change my overall mindset towards my finances. In fact, this right here is a notebook that I had from back in March 2019 to April 2020 with some notes from even before that. And if we open it up here, we can see that I had the money allocation for financial freedom listed as living expenses 55%, long-term savings, investments, education, and so forth, all divided up into different categories. And I had divided it up into 5 categories, but that can just be overly confusing and complicated to follow. So this is why we've now just split it up into 3 categories, being 50-30-20. Alright, so let me now just show you how simple this principle is to follow. Every month you'll start with your after-tax income, and from there you'll set percentage targets for 3 distinct categories of expenses. The first category is what's known as fixed expenses, which includes things such as your rent or mortgage payments, insurance, car payments, food, utilities, and everything else that's a fixed monthly cost. Following these principles, fixed expenses should represent 50% or less of your monthly after-tax income. So in this example, if you make say $5,000 a month, this would represent $2,500. And hey, before you panic because your fixed expenses represent 67.2% of your after-tax income, well, not to worry. When I started trying to implement this rule myself, my fixed expenses were over like 70% of my total after-tax income. So these are just rules and targets, I should say, that are guidelines to strive towards in order to achieve financial freedom, but ultimately they are malleable to your situation. Oh, and also, before I forget, it's important to also include trying to pay off the minimum amounts for your debts each month in your fixed expenses, because even though entirely wiping out your debts is going to actually be part of another category we're about to speak of, well, at the very least, paying off those minimum payments is something that needs to be implemented in order to keep your credit in check. The second category is what's known as variable expenses, including things such as entertainment, eating out, clothing, and any other purchase that doesn't necessarily fall in your monthly fixed costs. I like to view variable expenses as things that might be really nice to have but aren't 100% necessities, like maybe that PS5 you've been eyeing or your 6 monthly subscriptions to Netflix, Disney+, HBO Max, Crave, Hulu, as well as Peacock. Well, wait, Peacock is definitely not a necessity. This category of expenses should represent 30 30% or less of your after-tax income. So in the previous example, this would represent around $1,500. And last but not least, we have what I like to call the Financial Independence Fund, which accounts for savings, emergency funds, investment accounts, rental properties, if that's something you do, and any other investment that you make, which would represent 20% or more of your monthly income. And you know how I said minimum debt payments would be in the fixed expenses category? Well, they are, but now in the financial freedom category, we can also focus, if you do carry any consumer debt, on paying this off at a quicker pace, because this is going to be extremely important to accomplish before starting to save and invest in the first place. Now, of course, accurately allocating exactly 50, 30, or 20% of your take-home income to these different categories of expenses is much easier when you have steady income coming in, for example, from a 9-to-5 job. And this is exactly why I was personally able to strive towards these exact percentages down to a T when I had a full-time government position a couple of years back before taking that leap to going full-time on YouTube. So this is a really good strategy to implement when you're a beginner and also when you have steady income coming in. That being said, if you are like me today where your income each month is more variable, well, I'm going to be sharing with you exactly what I do now later on in the video. But let's now take a quick second to thank today's video partner, Atlas VPN, which is a tool used to encrypt your data and hide your virtual location while you're browsing the internet. You've probably heard of a VPN before, but the way it works is that when you connect to Atlas VPN server, you'll temporarily be given a new IP and DNS address so that all of your browsing traffic is encrypted and routed towards VPN server, which will help protect you during your web browsing, but can also allow you to access media from your selected location. So this can come in handy if, say, you're doing online banking or trading crypto on an open network to protect your data, which is definitely an increasing concern to be aware of. And on a lighter note, it can also be used to access your favorite shows on international Netflix servers. Atlas VPN is also supported on Windows, Android, iOS, and macOS. So no matter where your allegiance lies, your data will remain encrypted. Now, I know everyone here loves a good deal, so Atlas VPN is currently running a massive discount on their 3-year deal for only $1.39 per month, which, considering the amount of inflation right now, is literally less than the price of a bagel per month to keep your information safe. And if you aren't happy with the services, they offer a 100% money back guarantee for 30 days. So make sure to check out the link down in the description. And on that note, let's get right back to the video. Okay, so when I had just graduated university and got my first job in an apartment with my girlfriend ready to tackle the world, well, I quickly realized that it would be really difficult to follow a blueprint for financial freedom without first changing my overall mindset towards money. Although I'll admit this might sound kind of preachy and it might feel like you're far from financial freedom, well, it's important to realize that there's absolutely nothing standing in your way from achieving your own financial goals or achieving that 50-30 split other than your own mindset and desire to actually achieve these goals in the first place. And I'd be lying to you if I didn't admit that this was one of the most challenging things that I've ever done in my life, but it all started with reframing my relationship with money and also gamifying my personal finances, where I would look at saving and investing my money as a game, literally, and spending money as something keeping me away from my true goal being to leave that job and pursue my own path. All of this to say, when you realize that money can't necessarily buy you happiness, but it can buy you freedom, well, it's then a lot easier to eliminate all your other temporary desires that aren't 100% necessities and that are just keeping you away from achieving financial freedom. All right, now, of course, I'd be fooling myself if I actually thought that the 50-30-20 rule applied universally to everyone watching this video.
Congratulations. You played yourself.
Because it doesn't, quite simply. In fact, it doesn't even apply to my current situation right now. You see, depending on where you live, your age, whether or not you have kids, if you're fresh out of university, whatever your situation might be, fixed and variable expenses will greatly differ, and so will the relationship with your overall income. So again, you shouldn't worry about 100% hitting these targets like your Iron Man fighting off some aliens. Rather, you need to tailor these amounts and make them appropriate for your current, but also your future desired situation 20, 30, maybe even 40 years down the line, so that your financial freedom fund has time to grow and compound over time. So if you're a student fresh out of university and you just got your first job in an apartment, well, it's very possible that your fixed expenses are going to be 60, 70, heck, maybe even 80% of your total take-home income. And this is normal because everyone's going to have a baseline amount of fixed expenses just to sustain their living. But it's through controlling your variable expenses and increasing increasing your income that you can strive towards that 50-30-20 split and maybe even skyrocket past that, considering the fact that you don't inflate your lifestyle along the way. And if you're making, say, $500K a year, well, chances are you don't need $250,000 for your fixed expenses. So it's here that you can really start reframing that income split to maybe 10, 10, and 80. That's definitely something that's very possible. All right, so if you didn't skip through the video, well, you may remember earlier on that I mentioned that I don't even use the 50-30-20 split anymore because it doesn't really apply as my income is variable each month. Instead, each month I receive income from various different income sources for my business that are all funneled into one main account. From there though, I pretty much know exactly what my fixed expenses are each month, as they're always usually around the same amount. And it's then in my variable expenses that I try to refrain myself from splurging too much on sushi rolls or whatever else I'm targeted with by Facebook ads. Whatever is then left over from that amount, I send over to my financial freedom fund, which is usually in excess of 60% of my income. But again, that varies each month. What keeps me going with this mindset though is that every extra dollar that I save and invest is one extra dollar working for me, bringing me closer to a point where all of my investment income is enough to pay for my living expenses in their entirety. So here are a couple words of advice now to wrap up today's video. First off, don't get lost in trying to do exactly what someone else has accomplished or maybe told you to do, because the reality is that everyone's financial situation is entirely different. So you need to tailor what you consume to your own realities. It's also important to try and avoid analysis paralysis at all costs. Just remember that it's better to start with imperfect action and just working towards bettering yourself day in and day out rather than trying to sprint right away. And I'll leave you with one of my favorite quotes from entrepreneur Ed Milet that even I need to remind myself quite often as it applies to various different aspects of my life. Humans have the tendency to overestimate what they can accomplish in the short term and underestimate what they can achieve in the long term. The point being, it's okay to start with imperfect small actions and adjust as you go along. I really hope this video was able to provide you value that you're able to start implementing today. Now, if you want to learn more about passive income sources, I'd recommend that you check out one of the videos that I'm going to be overlaying at the end of this video. There's also quite a few other resources down below in the description, so make sure to check those out, as well as Atlas VPN if you're looking to encrypt your web data. So on that note, thanks a lot for watching, and I will see you in the next one.